seas around Britain impassable for our supply ships. The Admiralty gave orders to every available British shipyard to build this new class of warship to counter the threat. And today, in ever-increasing numbers, new corvettes are going down the slipways.
Well, hello everyone, it's me again, Matt. Appreciate you stopping by on today's video. What is this? A World War II ship video on Maximus's channel? What is this? Blasphemy. Most of you are used to me seeing, producing modern day equipment videos on my channel, but a lot of you have constantly requested, Matt, when are you going to do World War II stuff? And a lot of you have also been asking to do a lot of naval stuff, so I thought I'd combine the two requests into one video today. But do not be fooled, it does not mean I'm going to be constantly producing World War II era videos. I'm definitely not a subject matter expert when it comes to World War II era style equipment and military equipment. However, I do know someone who is, especially about this particular warship, the Flower-class Corvette. I'd like to dedicate this video specifically to Relogic, one of my moderators on my channel, a very good friend of mine in the military and in my everyday life. He has actually produced the script for today's video, so thank you, sir. He's also produced his own video about this ship on his own YouTube channel. I will leave the link to his channel in the description box below. He's got a great video already made about this ship, but he thought I would enjoy actually producing the video on my channel, and that's what I decided to do today. So we are talking about the Flower-class Corvette, a rather interesting ship of World War II due to the fact of how prestigious it was in providing so much support for the navies around the world, especially across the Atlantic, providing supplies. Now, to understand the Flower-class Corvette, first one must understand the environment in which she was created. In early 1939, the United Kingdom's Royal Navy began to realize that the threat of the war of Nazi Germany was ever increasing. This would mean that the island nation could become vulnerable if its vast sea trade routes were exploited by the enemy. Of course, we know of the wolf packs and the infamous U-boats that sunk many ships during the Atlantic campaign, and of course this was a major concern for many navies at the time. The solution to this problem was quite simple, and was put into practice in the past during World War I, when the use of naval convoys protected by warships of the Royal Navy and Allies. However, the British Empire was not as wealthy as it once was as a result of the Great Depression, and therefore could not afford to create a destroyer fleet large enough to be an effective deterrent from Germany's attack, nor quick enough to be implemented in a timely manner. The British Admiralty turned to the Smith's Dock Company, which, although never built warships before, was a successful fishing boat builder. Their solution was to convert a whaling ship design into the smallest classification of open sea warships called Corvettes. With months of deliberation, designing and building, the first Flower-class launched on 24th of January 1940, almost 5 months after the outbreak of World War II, while another 116 were in some stage of construction in shipyards around the Commonwealth. As mentioned before though, these were rather small warships, with a length of 205 feet and a beam or width of 33 feet. And the displacement at about 950 tons, they seem more like a ship in a bottle rather than a warship when compared to the Titan battleships of the day. But those Titans were not the focus of the Flower-class. It was a threat that lurked unseen and unheard below the waterline: the German U-boat. These weapons were put to devastating effect in the Atlantic, destroying countless merchant ships that were carrying vital supplies to a nation growing ever more desperate with each passing hour of the early war years. By March of 1940, over 222 Allied ships carrying over 500,000 tons of supplies had already been lost to U-boats, and the rates of sinking would continue to rise at an alarming rate. Winston Churchill, the Prime Minister of the UK during World War II, once said that the U-boat problem in the Atlantic was the only thing that truly scared him, even more so than the Battle of Britain. This was the Flower-class's mission. Like a sheepdog protecting from a pack of wolves, the Flower-class would escort convoys of defenceless merchant ships across the Atlantic and protect them from the packs of German U-boats. To do this, the Flower-class was fitted with the SW1C radar system, a Type 123 Alpha sonar system, one 4-inch BL Mark V gun, two 50 caliber machine guns, two Lewis 303 cal machine guns twins, two Mark II depth charge throwers, and most importantly, two depth charge rails with 40 depth charges ready to fire as many as they needed to sink the U-boats beneath them. Now, there is no sugarcoating this. The ships were absolute hell to serve on. The first problem is that the ships were required to be manned by double the sailors than first anticipated, therefore sleeping quarters were often wherever the space could be found, which was common in rather uncomfortable and cramped spaces on naval ships. The second problem was that the original design of the ship was not intended for the harsh North Atlantic, and therefore the ship would experience extreme rolling and listing in rough seas, as much as 80 degrees, causing severe sickness for many of the crew. Thirdly, because of the design, areas like the bridge and wheelhouse had a canvas roof, so when the ship would break over a wave, a wall of freezing cold Arctic water, the same that would be of that the Titanic faced, would crash down on top of the crew and flow down many sections of the ships where the crew were forced to sleep. This resulted in the crews experiencing very long, wet, cold and rough Atlantic crossings. Finally, the ship was propelled by a single shaft propeller with double-acting triple expansion, reciprocating steam engine at the end of it. This engine produced 2,750 horsepower, which propelled the ship around about 16 knots. This was sufficient to keep the pace with many older merchant marine ships within the convoy or submerged U-boats. But, once serviced, the more advanced diesel-electric engines of the U-boats could outperform the older Flower-class system, causing a submarine to slip out of the weapons range of this ship. These ships were also rushed into service with rookie crews who had very little experience, or in many cases had never even seen the ocean before, let alone a ship, and some weapon and detection systems were even waiting to be installed. In some instances, Flower classes were sent to sea with only a single Lee-Enfield rifle on board to protect herself and the convoy, and were fitted with a telephone pole in place of the 4-inch gun to deceive the enemy. With the fall of France in early 1940, more trouble was to come for the Flower class, as 4 of these ships were built for the French and would fall into the hands of the German Navy, and served with the enemy until all but 1 were destroyed by the Allied bombing mission on the port of Le Havre in 1944. Now, even with all these disadvantages that make you smack your forehead against the wall wondering how on earth did the Allies win this war, this class of warships served with distinction throughout the Battle of the Atlantic and in other theatres. The Flower class found itself protecting the Allied fleet from submarine attack during the Normandy landing on D-Day, and could be found protecting troop transports and supplies in the Mediterranean throughout the Italian and North African campaign. Its production numbers were also staggering, with 294 ships, causing it to make up over half of all escort ships in the Atlantic, and serving with mainly the Royal Canadian Navy, represent, and the Royal Navy, but were also commissioned in smaller quantities with the US Navy, Free French Navy, Free Belgian Navy, Free Netherlands Navy, and many other allied countries. By 1941, newer Flower classes were being received, and an upgrade in both detection and weapon systems, and yet another increase of crew members to a total of 95. Radars were replaced with the Type 271 surface-to-air or the 2CP air warning system. The sonar was updated to the Type 145, and the weaponry comprised of one 4-inch BL Mark V single gun and one 2-pounder gun. There was also the Mark 8 single pom-pom, 2 20mm single guns, and 1 Hedgehog anti-submarine warhead mortar. Additionally, 4 times Mark II depth charge throwers and 2 depth rails with up to 70 depth charges, making it a very serious threat for any submarine or even aircraft at the time. The Prime Minister of the UK would affectionately give the nickname the cheap and the nasties, as they were given the cheap build yet the nasty problem to the enemy, and nasty they certainly were. Over the course of the war, 47 German and 4 Italian submarines were sunk by Flower-class ships. This was done by either destroying the submarines with depth charges, Hedgehog mortars, or in some cases by damaging the submarines with the depth charges to a point where they were forced to surface and then were cut in half when a Flower-class would ram them. This job did not come at a cost, however. From their implementation to the end of the war, 36 Flower-classes were lost. 22 were lost to torpedoes launched by German U-boats, 5 would strike underwater mines, and 4 would be sunk by enemy aircraft. 4 were also lost as a result of collisions to other Allied ships. In early May 1945, Nazi Germany would surrender, and the longest battle of the Second World War would come to an end in the Atlantic. Over 72,000 service personnel would lose their lives in the North Atlantic after the sinking of over 3,675 Allied vessels. At the end of the war, the Flower-class ships found themselves to be among the most obsolete warships in the Allied navies, and were really showing their usage and age. This caused the class to be the first on the list of many navies to be retired, and unfortunately most flower classes were sent immediately to the scrapyard. Some were sold and recommissioned as coastal patrol boats in countries such as Chile, Argentina, serving in those countries as long as till the 1970s, while others were repurposed as towboats or fishing boats, which somewhat makes me quite sad, but also quite happy to know that they still did something in service. Today, only one remains and is found in CFB Halifax in its original configuration. HMCS Sackville remains as a museum ship to honour those who have served on these incredible warships, and to those who never made it home. So folks, as you can see, the Flower class, although a little underrated at the beginning, became one of the most prestigious ships to actually provide service to the Allied navies of the day in World War II, providing so much support, firepower, and consideration to merchant fleets than any other ship out there. I think it's a testament to, navies around the world that used this ship at that time to say, you know what, we don't have the biggest guns, we don't have the biggest ships, we don't have the most high-tech equipment, but we're doing what we need to protect the most vital requirement of any war: supply. And without those supplies being shipped to and from the UK and other countries, it would be an absolute nightmare for the war, and absolutely no way of winning the war without those vital, crucial missions coming across back and forth the oceans of the world. And I have to personally say, as a Canadian and as a British person, that I'm proud to know that these ships served in both of my navies of nations that I now currently have or still serve with. And it's a testament to say that, you don't need the big guns, you don't need the big flotillas of ships. Even to this day, we don't have massive navies like we used to, but we do have skilled crews, the dedication and the commitment to complete the mission. And that's really, really speaking to, the crews of World War II that served on these ships. They knew they were in an underclass ship. They knew they were constantly surrounded by some of the most terrifying military pieces of equipment at the time, the U-boat, taking out vast amounts of ships, supplies, and loss of life. But they went headstrong and did it anyway. And that really is, a testament to naval fighting spirit. And I don't know much about the Navy. I don't talk about it much because I'm really not savvy to naval history and equipment and firepower. But when you learn about a ship of this type and the sailors that served on it, it really does make you feel very proud to know of what they did, how they served, and the missions that they accomplished. So this video is also dedicated to everyone and every person and sailor who served on these ships and to the lives that unfortunately were lost during this time. So thank you to all of you who joined me today. I appreciate it once again from Mr. Relogic for dedicating some scripting to this video. Thank you very much, sir. If you did enjoy the video, please make sure you hit the little bell by the subscribe button. You can also follow me on Facebook, and if you want to be following my Patreon and PayPal, the links are in the description box below. All the best, folks. Bye-bye.